You tell yourself it's love, but somewhere deep inside it still feels hollow. You smile through it, whisper that it must be real, because how could something that burns this intensely be false? And yet, in the silence, you can feel it. The ache, the restlessness, the chasing of something that never stays. It looks like love. It sounds like love. It even hurts like love. But it isn't love. It's a mirror reflecting your hunger, not your healing. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And one of the most intoxicating distractions is the illusion of being chosen. We confuse relief for romance. We mistake desires, rush for love's stillness. And then we build castles on quicksand. There's a kind of attention that feels like oxygen when you've been starving for it. They see you, they praise you. For a moment, the emptiness vanishes. You feel alive, wanted, enough, but that feeling is fragile. It depends on them showing up, playing the part, staying consistent. And when they don't, when they pull away, go silent, turn cold, you crumble. Because what you called love was really escape. Escape from the ache of your own loneliness. Escape from the part of you that still whispers, "If someone chooses me, then I matter." But Jung would tell you that whisper is your shadow, and the shadow doesn't care if you grow. It only cares if you survive, even if survival means repeating the same suffering. You weren't drawn to them by accident. You were drawn by recognition, not soul recognition, but wound recognition. They reminded you of something unfinished, a parent who wasn't present, a love that was conditional, a silence that taught you your needs were too much. So when someone gives you just enough to feel special, but never enough to feel secure, you cling. You don't just want them, you want redemption. You want to rewrite the story. If I can just make them love me fully, if I can just prove I'm enough, then maybe the pain I've carried will finally disappear. But that isn't love. That's reenactment. And reenactment always feels like déjà vu. It feels real because it mirrors your earliest blueprint for connection. But true love isn't built on adrenaline, it's built on presence. And presence doesn't make you anxious. It makes you safe. Yes, they knew what to say. Yes, they looked at you like you were gravity itself. Yes, they made you feel alive. But they never stayed. And still, you clung to every glance, every word, every promise, hoping this time would be different. That maybe, finally, you'd be enough for them to stay. But the truth is, you weren't in love with them. You were addicted to how you felt about yourself in their presence. They gave you a high that numbed the pain. But highs always crash, and that isn't love. That's a pleasure trap, because real love doesn't just see you in your light. It stands with you in your dark. But when your worth feels dependent on someone else's attention, heartbreak doesn't just break you, it collapses you. You start thinking, if they don't want me, was I ever enough at all? But that question never belonged to you. It belongs to the version of you who was never taught that worth isn't earned, it's inherent. Something you already carry, even if you've forgotten. Jung believed we project our unlived parts onto others. We fall for people who awaken what we've disowned, not because they complete us, but because they reflect what we've abandoned in ourselves. So sometimes what you crave in them isn't them at all. It's the version of you that felt alive when they looked at you, the version of you that smiled without doubt, the version of you that believed they mattered. But if that version only exists in their gaze, then it wasn't love. It was approval, and approval can never hold the weight of love, Because the moment it's withdrawn, everything built on it crumbles. There comes a moment in every pleasure trap when the truth can no longer be ignored, when the high no longer covers the hollowness, when the craving feels less like desire and more like grief, when your body knows it isn't safe, even while your mind refuses to let go. That's when you realize you were never chasing them. You were chasing relief from the emptiness, from the fear, from yourself, and the one thing you were running from, the silence, was never trying to punish you. It was trying to meet you, to show you what hurts, to help you remember who you were before. You tied your worth to anyone else's attention. If this sounds like your story, you're not alone. You're not broken, you're not weak, you're human, and you're waking up. Waking up from the idea that love must come through suffering, that you need to be chosen to be whole, that someone else's validation is the only path to peace. The ache you feel is not a sign you've lost something real. It's a sign that something inside you is ready to stop performing for love and start remembering that you were worthy all along. You don't have to prove anything anymore. You don't have tocus. What doesn't stay, you don't have to call pain a soulmate. You are allowed to want peace. You are allowed to let go. You are allowed to rest. If this message stirred something in you, if you've ever mistaken relief for romance, if you've ever felt like you were chasing connection but losing yourself in the process, subscribe Tough Channel and leave a comment. Have I ever realized it wasn't love? It was just a way to escape the silence. Your story might be the mirror someone else needs today. Thank you for being here, but don't look away just yet. Because if you stay with this reflection a little longer, you might finally see the invisible hand that's been pulling you back and begin to understand why the love you want will never come from the place you've been searching, not because it was supposed to, but because your nervous system learned to recognize pain as home. The people wanted you, who made you feel invisible. They shaped your blueprint, the ones who offered you love in exchange for silence, for performance, for shrinking yourself. They taught your heart to expect. And now, when Sumiane gives you chaos, you lean in. When they pull away, you reach harder. When they disappear, your mind writes a story that blames you. This isn't because you don't know better. It's because part of you still believes that if you finally get it right this time, the past might not hurt so much. But that belief is there as in you're stuck. It keeps you chasing people who recreate it. Original wound because you're want freedom, it wants resolution, and it will keep inviting the same lesson until you see the pattern, feel the pain, and say, no more. The root of craving isn't love, it's memory. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious just forget. Even when your mind has buried the story, your body remembers every moment it felt unsafe to betray. Every time you expressed a need and were punished for it. Every time you showed joy and were mocked. Every time you were vulnerable and left alone with it. These aren't just memories. They become internal laws, rules you follow without even knowing. Don't ask for too much. Don't trust love. It disappears. If someone hurts you, it's because you deserved it. And worst of all, if they leave, it means something's wrong with you. This is the foundation of the pleasure trap. Because when someone finally comes along and gives you attention, even if it's inconsistent, even if it's laced with anxiety, your nervous system lights up, not because you feel safe, but because the pattern is familiar. It mimics the earliest bond, the one you couldn't question as a child, the one you had to adapt to, the one that Modelo V conditional dot, and now that conditional love is what you keep searching for. You don't chase people, You chase the emotional blueprint that shaped you. You meet someone stable, kind, available, and yet you feel nothing. No butterflies, no urgency, no obsession. So, you tell yourself, they're not my type. There's no spark. They're too nice. But what you're really saying is, they don't activate my trauma. When you've lived your whole life in emotional survival, safety feels suspicious, peace feels boring, consistency feels foreign, and buying loved without having to earn it feels undeserved, so you push it away. You ghost the healthy ones. You chase the ones what trigger you. Not because you're toxic, but because your body still thinks their tension equals importance. That anxiety means you care. That love must be dramatic to be real. But that's not love. That's survival. That's what teeth looks like when the shadow chews easier relationships. Carl Jung taught that the shadow isn't evil. It's just unconscious. It holds the parts of you that were shamed, ignored, or rejected. And it tries to protect you by keeping you close to what it understands, even if what it understands is pain. So, the shadow creates defense mechanisms. It convinces you to stay with what's familiar. It sabotages peace. It questions real intimacy. It whispers, "This is too easy. Something must brew on." And when things get too still, too soft, too kind, you panic. You start fights. You distance yourself. You'll convince yourself that this kind of love is fake. But what's really happening is that your shadow is terrified of being seen without your armor. Because for so long, love was about performance. It was about being good enough to keep someone from leaving. And now that Samir Nido-Snect require the performance, you didn't know who to be. But the discomfort you feel isn't a red flag. It's a signal that your nervous system is adjusting to a new reality. One where love doesn't cost you your bias. You don't need to prove you're worthy of. You don't need to shrink to Beckerson. You don't need to trade your silence for temporary affection. But to truly live that truth, you must first face the shadow. Not fight it, not chum it, but listen to it. Ask the part of you that always chases, what are you afraid will happen if we stop? Ask the part that pulls away from kindness. What does safety feel like to you? Ask the part that only feels alive in chaos. When did calm start feeling like danger? This is the inner work Jung called individuation, becoming whole by integrating what we single quotes be hidden. And it starts with a simple but terrifying act. Honesty. Honesty about what you feel. Honesty about what you're realizing. 4. Not someone who compelled you, but someone who doesn't require you to abandon yourself. There's something inside you that knows truth. Even if you've never had a healthy relationship, even if you've never seen real love up close, there's a deeper voice beneath craving. It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. It waits. It's the part of you that remembers what peace feels like. The part of you that's tired of running. The part that no longer wants to mistake obsession for intimacy. And that voice is growing louder. You hear it in the moments you pause, before reaching out in the seconds. You stop yourself from justifying their behavior. In the deep breath you take one, you feel the old ache. But don't act on it. That's not weakness. That's healing. That's healing. You're beginning to break the cycle. Not by force, but by understanding. By realizing that you no longer need to repeat the past in order to feel safe. You can choose differently. Not from fear, but from clarity. The pleasure trap was never about them. It was about your story. The one you've been living in without even knowing. The one where love equals pain and connection must be earned. But what if that story is ready to end? What if all the chaos, the craving, the lapse was just your soul asking for something truer. Not louder, not brighter, just real. There is a different kind of love waiting. One that doesn't trigger your nervous system. One that doesn't leave you starving. One that begins not when someone chooses you, but when you stop betraying yourself to feel. And the first step toward that kind of love is learning how to meet that part of you that's still chasing the one woe never stayed. The truth is what we often call love has been something else all along. It has been projection that has been craving. It has been their nervous system chasing relief and calling it destiny. But now you're beginning to see. You are beginning to notice that the one always left you empty was not the problem. The problem was the pattern, the blueprint that said, if it hurts, it must be love. And here is where Jung's wisdom becomes life-changing, because he never told us to reject our shadow. He told us to listen, to see what it wants, to hear what it fears. Because the shadow isn't an enemy, it's a wounded protector. And until you fail, it will keep building traps that look like romance. There's a part of you that sabotages your peace. It makes you text back when you swore you'd walk away. It convinces you to settle when you know you deserve all. It makes silence unbearable. So fill it with people who only mirror your ache. This part of you is not cruel, it's scared. It still believes you cannot survive rejection. It still believes abandonment means death. And soir drags you back over and over to terms of those who will never stay. Jung's answer was not to repress this saboteur, it was to dialogue with it, to zot with it in imagination as if it were a person and ask, what are you protecting me from? What do you fear will happen if I let go? When you listen, you realize the saboteur has always been trying to save you. It just doesn't know you've grown. It still thinks you're the child one needed to perform to be loved. It still thinks that choosing peace means risking rejection. It still thinks chaos is safer than being left alone. But once you see it, you can thank it. You can tell it, I know you're scared, but I'm not that child anymore. And slowly, it begins to release its grip. Every painful pattern carries energy. The craving, the jealousy, the panic when someone pulls away. These are not weaknesses, they are signals. Signals thought there's life trapped inside your wounds. Anger, for example, can become a courage when understood. Fear can become intuition. Insecurity can turn into humility. Even jealousy, when faced honestly, can become the reminder that you to deserve, to be fully chosen. Jung said, where there is fear, there is power. Which means the places you've been running from are not just prisons, they are doors. Behind them is the energy you've been missing. Behind them is the strength you've been searching for in others. The pleasure trap collapses not when you reject your cravings, but when you reclaim them. When you ask, what is this emotion trying to teach me? What part of me needs attention right now? What gift is buried inside this pain? Because once you stop fighting your emotions, you begin to use them. And suddenly, what once felt like sabotage bombs fuel. Real love is not built on obsession, it's built on honesty. It doesn't demand that you shrink. It doesn't punish you for having needs. It doesn't disappear when things get difficult. Real love is quiet enough for your soul to breathe. It's steady enough for your nervous system to relax. It's deep enough to hold the shadow without fear. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop chasing the wrong kind of love, you create space for the right kind to appear. Not because someone suddenly saves you, but because you finally meet yourself. And when you meet yourself, you no longer need to play roles. You no longer need to perform. You no longer need to mistake intensity for intimacy. You can let someone love you as you are, not as the mask you've been wearing. That is the freedom Jung pointed toward. The freedom of individuation. The freedom of becoming whole. Not perfect, not flawless, but complete. The truth is this: you were never unworthy. You were never too much. You were never broken. You were simply carrying the beliefs of the child who thought love must hurt. And now you're putting those beliefs down. This doesn't mean the shadow disappears. It means it becomes part of you, no longer pulling the strings in secret. It means that when you feel the craving to run back, you can pause. You can ask, is this love? Or is this fear dressed as love? And fourth, first time you can choose differently. That choice is everything. It's the difference between repeating the past and writing a new story. So here you err on the edge of that choice. Do you keep chasing what soothes but never heals? Or do you sit with the silence long in auto, discover that you don't need Savinga more? Because the moment you stop calling chaos love, something beautiful happens. The hunger softens, the shadow quits, and the soul finally has space to speak. It tells you you are always now, and the love you've been searching for begins here. Asterisk. Thanks for listening. See you in next one.